Hi, I'm Sarah Gonzalez. Welcome to the news and why it matters.
Oh my gosh, it really is Sarah Gonzalez.
Sarah
I love your show. I listen to it on podcast every day.
Do you?
I love it, yes.
Thank
Well,
you.
they pay
Thank
me
you.
to listen to it.
Oh.
I have to sit here through it, but I do listen.
And it's Friday and you're here.
It's Friday and I'm here.
We're so excited.
gonna be
Although,
great.
yeah, we Steve unfortunately couldn't join us. I know we
Oh, I got to
promoted
catch a
that,
plane.
So sorry. Yeah. But Glenn, what's your top story?
Top story, I think the most interesting story and the one that could have global ramifications is this bizarre story out of Turkey and Saudi Arabia.
So a weird media quirk I think we have, which is we get into these cultural flashpoints and then we never kind of examine what happened with them. I've got one for you today.
You mean there's something that happens in the news cycle and then everyone forgets about it?
Yeah, and then
Like
no
the next day after they destroy someone's
Yes.
life.
That's
Okay.
great one like that
Yeah,
today.
just checking. Jason.
I'm right along with the boss man. I think it's the same exact story, the Saudi journalist. But my perspective, I guess, but how my angle is probably from just the way the differences in the way the media is covering it, how they've been covering this guy for the past decade versus how they're covering it now, and I don't expect them to go do any further digging on it.
No.
Before we get into all of that, want to thank our sponsor, My Patriot Supply. We were just talking about, fallout shelters.
Bomb shelters.
Yes, and just what we would do, what would happen in the event that there was some sort of emergency.
We actually live in a part of the country where you don't have a bomb shelter for a doomsday. You have it because of tornadoes.
Yeah.
And we don't have one at our house, and it's really I don't know how people grew up here with tornadoes and don't freak out all the time. Yeah. But it's really something that you need to worry about here. Just like in Florida, you've got to worry about hurricanes.
Yes, exactly. So here, you build your fallout shelter, you build your tornado shelter, and you need to get some food to go along with it, right? Because you don't know how long you're going to be trapped in that place.
Yeah, I know. You can be trapped for an hour or so, and I need Doritos, I need salsa, I need all kinds of queso, I need a microwave oven to heat it up with. It's crazy.
I don't. We're not gonna. No,
that's
not,
not it?
Not a microwave.
Oh, okay.
No,
All right.
Sorry.
All right.
But it is My Patriot Supply. They've got breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and they've got, what is it, a 25-year shelf life?
Yeah, this is 2 weeks emergency food supply. I mean, think about taking your kids out to, my wife, we go out with my kids every Saturday to have breakfast, and my family is growing with grandkids and everything else. My wife told me how much it was every weekend, and I'm like, what? We are having cereal here at the house. $75 for 2 weeks of food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, only at My Patriot Supply right now. I think it ends this week.
And it's preparewithnews.com. That is preparewithnews.com.
25-year shelf life.
Yeah.
Stu and I tried to stockpile Taco Bell, and it didn't work out.
If you're stuck in
Only
your
because
shelter
you'll
for
eat it.
Not even a 25-minute stock.
all right, so the journalist.
So let me tell the story, and then let Jason tell the
Yes.
media spin
Yes.
on it, because it's
Such a story.
it is an amazing story. It is the story Grace Kelly and Jimmy Stewart tell in Rear Window. If you've ever seen that,
Yeah.
nobody believed them because it was too horrific of an idea. So here's this Washington Post journalist that everybody loves. More on that in a second. That everybody loves. He's a Saudi citizen. He supposedly was friends with the prince, the new prince, the guy who's, the mover and shaker, and he's liberating the Middle East. More on that in a second as well. Used to be friends, then became a critic, then left, is in self-imposed exile, and starts writing things about Saudi Arabia and the prince and everything else. So he's in Istanbul, Khashoggi, and the reporter, and he has to go and get the paperwork from his divorce in Saudi Arabia. He has to get the paperwork, and his fiance is in the car with him, and he says, "You wait in the car. I'm going to go to the embassy here in Istanbul, and I'm going to get that paperwork. I'll be right back out. Wait for me." So she waits, and she waits, and she waits, and she waits, and she waits. And no Khashoggi coming out. She phones him, no answer, hour after hour after hour. Finally, she puts out an alert. The Washington Post gets involved and says, "Saudi Arabia, where is he?" "Oh, he left hours ago." "Did he?" "CCTV cameras show him going in, shows no one coming out." They claim We don't know what happened to him. The next day, we find out that at the same time that he went in, about an hour later, there was the prince's jet that landed in Istanbul. It's a Gulfstream private jet, and a bunch of guys get off with a bunch of what appear to be empty suitcases on the way to the...
How do they appear to be empty suitcases? Is that
Well, it was a lot of luggage.
A lot of luggage,
They
okay.
were carrying a bunch of luggage.
A lot of luggage didn't appear to be heavy.
Right, okay.
We don't know.
They could have just been like super strong.
Maybe.
Okay, so they load it in the car, but on the way to the embassy, they decide they need to stop and buy extra luggage.
You gotta have more luggage.
Yeah.
They have more
You
luggage.
could never have enough,
All right,
really.
so they stop and they buy a bunch of extra luggage. We know that's empty. They have to make one more stop to buy a bone saw.
Well, naturally. Yes.
Bone Saw Depot. That's the best place.
I mean, I don't even know where you buy one. I don't even know where you buy one. but-
Every trip I take, I have to.
yeah, sure. You got a suitcase. Honey, did you get the suitcase and the bone saw? So they
How
get...
many times do I have to tell you to get the bone saw?
I know. So they have the video of them getting out, going into the embassy with the luggage and the bone saw, and they go in. They're in there for about an hour, you know, just chatting it up, packing luggage, you know, packing, I don't know, meat, maybe meat of some sort.
Yes.
And so they leave now with really heavy luggage, and they go right back to the airport, put the heavy luggage onto the airplane, and fly away. Now, at the same time that this is released, and we have the footage of them doing this, at the same time, the United States of America comes out and says, oh, by the way, we have a coded intercept that we got with the prince and the ambassador trying to lure him into the embassy, okay? So the first thing that we know is our CIA or somebody is releasing that, oh yeah, they were after him. That's not a good sign. Then, today, Turkey comes out, and I don't know if I believe this because Turkey is a bad player, but Turkey comes out and says, we have equipment in the Saudi embassy, and we have on tape, apparently video and audio, of him being questioned, then tortured, then horribly killed.
Wow.
Saudis say this is nuts. We're out on every golf course with O.J. Simpson looking for this poor man. We don't know where he is. This is really important for several reasons. Saudi Arabia is supposedly an ally of ours. We are selling a mass amount of arms about to be sold from us to Saudi Arabia. Should not go. And we are coming out kind of on the side of what appears to me, at least to be, at this point, the truth of, hey, this is the stuff we have. We're not taking a stand one way or another, but it does seem that we are willing to say, yeah, something weird's going on. Now, you tell the rest of the story, Jason.
So, wow, so much to unpack here. For one,
Ba-dum-bum.
I think that there is. I think it's very crazy. Not crazy, but it's interesting that, I mean, Trump was just in the Middle East and in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia not too long ago, and supposedly asking them for a lot. And that's when he secured that, you know, over $100 billion deal that apparently I think Jared Kushner helped to like seal that deal. But that was when, I don't want to call it a rapprochement, but that's when, you know, right when before we started, we got rid of the Iran nuclear deal. That was kind of our, you know, getting a little bit closer to them, saying sorry about, you know, the last 8 years. We do care about you guys, and we don't care about Iran. So that deal is still kind of like stuck out there. But it's really interesting that as we're trying to get close to them, that our own intelligence agencies are saying yes, we're basically helping the Turkish narrative on this.
Which is very confusing. We're helping in a proxy war in Yemen with Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia, yeah, and the rest of the Gulf nations. But by the way, the rest of the Gulf nations have backed Saudi Arabia, of course, right now. But the rest of the Gulf nations are bitterly opposed to the Muslim Brotherhood. Bitterly opposed.
Why is that?
So the Muslim Brotherhood, they're all about political Islam. So they want to use democracy. They don't care. They don't give a crap about democracy.
So they're Islamists.
They're Islamists.
And they want to create a...
Caliphate.
Huh, okay, all right, never heard that, okay.
I feel like I've heard it from someone.
I know.
But so they're Islamists. So they're very bad guys. But it just so happens to, and this is something I didn't mention on radio. We were talking about this on radio. But I actually believe that the reason why our intelligence services are backing this and releasing this is because I actually think that Khashoggi was a U.S. asset at this point. He was living in the United States. He's got a history that goes back to the 1980s, 1990s of actually being employed by the Saudis to make connections with Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden. So this guy, if there's dirty laundry, well, not if, he knows all the dirty laundry between the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the government, and Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden. He knows it all. And the Saudis know that. So when this journalist came to the United States and became a resident, was living here, they were like, oh my gosh, what is this guy saying while he's over there? So that's one thing. I actually think he was an asset of ours, and I think we were using him.
Which we would not find out in the public, at least at this point, that something that we all know, the Saudis were involved with 9/11.
Right, yeah. And also, and this is where I was hitting at before, is that the media for ever since, I think like 2011 or whatever, they've basically gone all in on the Muslim Brotherhood. They're like, oh yeah, they're great. No, they're not bad. They're
largely secular.
They're largely secular. They're all about democracy. That's what they're all about. The Arab Spring is a good thing. Well, this guy Khashoggi, he wanted to make a Muslim Brotherhood party in Saudi Arabia. He was one of the main opposition groups. I mean, they hated this guy. So basically, he wanted to take the Saudi out of Saudi Arabia.
So where does the story go? Where do you get the part of the story where he was good friends with the prince, and then it just kind of all went bad?
Yeah, I don't know where that even came from, because unless they're equating how he was helpful to them back in the 80s and 90s when they were all trying to distance themselves from Osama bin Laden, and how they were trying to explore that. Maybe that's what they mean.
So here's the real problem with this story. We are once again in the position of this guy was probably a bad guy. Our press will not recognize him as a bad guy because they don't see the problem with the Muslim Brotherhood nor the Caliphate. And so they won't recognize him as a bad guy. We may have had relationship with a bad guy who had kind of started to turn information over to us, which is always dicey. And we're now in the position of we're arming a state and involved in a proxy war with a state that is not in lockstep with any kind of human rights that we understand.
A mafia state. That's basically what the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. It's a mafia state. But that, again, that's what everyone's been saying. This guy's great. The new crown prince. He's doing all these liberal, progressive things. Women can drive now. All this stuff. He's going to take them into the next level. No, the only reason he's doing those things is because he fears social unrest. So he's doing this thing for the appearance, but at the same time, people are disappearing en masse in Saudi Arabia.
Well, let me give you another perspective on that. He is a mafia state. He's a mafioso because that's the only way you can keep control while you change something like that. Yeah. So we're stuck in the middle of going, all right, here's a new Mubarak. Yes, he's got torture prisons that he's torturing people. But he's actually doing some good things and trying to keep the bad guys at bay. We don't want to lose him, so what do? We're right back to where we always are.
And the Saudi thing is interesting too. You might know the story better than I do, Jason. But it's not just like political opponents and journalists that are opposing them that are getting beat up by this. I mean, the new prince basically gave a nice little house arrest to a bunch of the other billionaire princes.
Right.
I mean, he actually is like, oh no, they're just held up in the Four Seasons, and they just couldn't leave.
Whatever happened to Prince Alawid?
Where
is he now?
I don't even remember. He must have gotten out.
Yeah.
Alawid, I know people. Alawid was instrumental in saving our banking system in 2008. Instrumental. I don't think I've ever said that on the air. And for as bad as he is, we went hat in hand to Alawid. And the conversation was very bizarre because he's a very bizarre guy. But we have relied on him before. Now, where is he?
He supposedly lost a giant chunk of his fortune to the kingdom. He's still pretty rich, I think.
I believe he, and you, Stu, could back this up or challenge me on it, but I think he helped pull some strings at Fox. He was an investor
at Fox. He's a big investor at Fox, yeah.
And he's
not anymore, I don't believe, but he was.
Yeah, he played a role in the pressure that I had to back away from Israel.
So weird about just the politics, geopolitics of the Middle East. Like, who can be your ally? A mafia state that slaughters a journalist on foreign soil just because they have a different opinion than you, basically. You have Iran. I mean, come on. They're basically ISIS, but in a nation state, that reside in a nation state. You've got Turkey. That's, again, another thug, mafia-type state.
Turkey's trouble.
I mean, who do you bet? Really, Israel is the only country there.
Israel.
That's it.
All right, back in a minute.
What's this Benjamin Netanyahu? What is
All right, got a lot more to get into, but want to thank our sponsor, iTarget Pro. I think that I might have one that's on the way, and I'm super excited to try it out. Yes, I have a little 380 at home, just for petite little me for home protection.
You know how many 380s you have to put into somebody to stop them?
I do have critically wounding ammo in it.
It's not like the movies where people fall back. Oh.
I mean, I hope I never have to find out.
Yeah.
But it does have a really, really long pull. And I don't get to the range very often, and so it's like every time that I do take it out, I'm like, God, it takes way longer than I think it's going to.
What kind of gun is it?
M&P?
HP?
No.
HP?
No.
M&P? Have you ever heard of M&P? Yeah, mom and pop gun.
I'll bring it in. I'll bring it in.
All right.
I think it's a Smith M&P. It's a
Smith & Wesson.
Yeah.
M&P.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anyway, so this is the best thing for you, and you should. And we're sitting here with the expert on this. You really should not carry a gun unless you are so comfortable with it, because it most likely will be turned against you. Mm-hmm. You have to be so comfortable. You have to have. It has to be part of you. And the only way to do that is go to the range all the time, or just have it, and when you're watching TV or you're sitting there, just squeeze that trigger for trigger control.
Yeah, I can't stress dry fire enough, especially with guns like yours with a really long pull, is that while you're doing that, you're going to pull it. And even if you're just doing it without any kind of assistance like our Target Pro, you're not going to know if you're pulling it. Well, the cool thing about our Target Pro is that it's got that little round. You can stick it in like a regular round. It's got like a little laser pointer thing on there. So every time you squeeze that trigger, it is pointing and shooting that laser right at the target.
But it's not a laser pointer. It's not like you put a laser thing. You can't see the laser.
Right.
It's just picking it up and putting it on a paper, if you will, target on your phone, so you know exactly if you've hit the target.
Is it sort of like Topgolf for guns?
Yeah, that's very good.
Wow, that's a really good analogy, actually.
Yeah.
So you can save 10% right now with promo code NEWS. Just go to itargetpro.com and use promo code NEWS. I can't wait for mine.
Great.
Stu.
Yes, we had a bit of a cultural flashpoint last year, if you remember, with the National Football League, where there was a kneeling controversy.
I don't think I heard.
Yeah, no, people talked about it only all the time. Apparently the most important thing in the world, that a couple people here and there were kneeling on football fields. And it turned into a thing where you remember Mike Pence flying in and leaving during the national anthem, and Trump tweeting about it, and Kaepernick yelling about it, and everybody's yelling on both sides. And it was an interesting moment because everyone got very fired up about it. There was a lot of stories about how this was going to affect things politically, how it was going to affect the NFL. The NFL was getting all beaten up about it. So it was interesting because you have those flashpoints, and that's kind of faded away, right? Like there's pretty much nobody kneeling anymore in the NFL. Trump's not really tweeting about it anymore. Well, what actually happened? Now we can go look back at all the numbers and see really what happened with the NFL ratings, and it's fascinating, I think, at least. Got a couple charts here for you. USA Today did a great breakdown of this. And what you see here are this is broken down not on overall ratings, which were down a little bit, but were ratings by city. And what you might notice here, first of all, the red ones are they're broken down Clinton and Trump, red and blue. And you see like this, a blue are up at the top, and the reds are down kind of at the bottom, which might make you believe that it kind of did have an effect. However, what you wind up finding out as you go through this is really what happened was it was a matter of whether the teams were good. If you look at the NFL last year, the New York Giants were terrible. The New York Jets were terrible. The Chicago Bears were terrible. The San Francisco 49ers were terrible. All the biggest markets had Houston was not very good either. If you look at increasing and decreased ratings, well, in the playoffs, all the ratings went up. Teams that were actually good. Teams that weren't good was about split. And only in places where there were no teams at all did you see any actual drop-off. And then finally, there's
Which is red state territory.
possibly, though, look at this. These are the ratings of how this went. This is in the middle of when Pence is walking out. It's when Trump calls for the firing of the players. What you see in the chart here, and of course, if you are listening on podcast, I'll try to explain it as best I can. There's a light blue line that shows the 2016 ratings, and you see the 2016 ratings, this is before the controversy, falling at almost an identical rate as the others. You also will see that strong Trump regions performed better. The NFL ratings were better in Trump regions than they were in strong Clinton and toss-up regions throughout the first 6 weeks. What it seems to show is that basically it was a lot more about how the NFL played out last year as a sport than it was about kneeling. Kneeling got a lot of people, a lot of material, but it didn't seem to do much of anything to the ratings.
Can you tell me, is this reflected at all with ESPN?
ESPN has had ratings attrition. I think there is a legitimate argument to be made that ESPN has gone, at least
overboard.
In the past, gone really far. I mean, like Jamel Hill was kind of the most famous person. She's now at the Atlantic writing God only knows what. She was writing about her first piece that actually came out today, and it was about how what white men don't understand when they're backing Kavanaugh. And it was like, what's the opposite of white-splaining and mansplaining? Because I think what she's doing is explaining to us what we're supposed to feel. Isn't that what you're not supposed to do anymore? But yeah, I mean, so there was a big, I think it's fallen out. Clay Travis has a new book. He's a Fox sports guy, and he has a new book out about, I think it's called Republicans Buy Sneakers Too. And it's about how the left has ruined sports for a lot of people. And I think that is real. There's definitely a contingency. Of people who just I don't want to deal with it anymore. You're not letting me have fun in this world anymore, and that's why I go there. But I mean, in reality, I think there's especially I think with ESPN is so much more commentary. The sport is still the sport, and it's still Americans still love their sports. They'll still go watch. There is a slight drop off, I think, every year from everything. One of the first indications that this story wasn't as big as everyone was saying it was, is there was a drop-off in the ratings from 2016 to 2017, but it was a smaller drop than the ratings drop for the networks. Then just the networks as a whole dropped more than the NFL did. And that I think indicates there is an attrition overall because people are going to other sources. There's a lot more choices now. We are in the golden age of television. We are right now. There's so many freaking good shows out there right now.
So a couple things. Most people don't know this, but up until Walt Disney died, Walt Disney was despised by the left. They hated Walt Disney. Hollywood hated him because they said it was all trite, it was, jingoistic, it was fantasy. They hated everything that he did. He never, ever became political, ever. He never let he was American, but he was never political. And look at that brand. Up until they started getting political and having an agenda, it was always pure. And it was a place, he built that berm around Disneyland, and then he bought all that land from Disney World. When you go to Disney World, you are off the main highway and on Disney property for miles before you hit the kingdom. And that's a parking lot. Then you go on and you have to go miles again. He did it for a reason. Separate from the world. Let me just be in peace and have fun.
Yeah.
He must be rolling in his grave.
He is.
We'll be back.
Interesting.
Want to make sure to remind everyone, we've got a brand new lineup starting Monday.
Yes.
We're really excited about it.
Cool.
So Pat Gray Unleashed is going to be from 7 to 9 Eastern. Then, of course, Glenn Beck Radio, and then Steve Dace.
Very cool.
From 12
Really,
to
you should
2
listen
Eastern.
if you don't know who he is, listen to the last hour of my radio broadcast today on demand. He's really wicked smart, has very different perspective, and I think you'll learn a lot.
Yeah.
It's great.
So make sure not to miss that next week, and check us out in Overtime. We're going to be talking, I'd like to talk about Kanye.
Yeah. And by the way,
God,
Monday,
no.
I also have another big announcement to make.
Ooh.